It is a gloomy Sunday afternoon here, raining and cold. So what's better to do than to talk about watches and having a small modifying project. As you can see in the workbench in front of us is the famous or infamous Timex Weekender. And this one in specific is a 38mm style, reference number T2N647. I know one of the flaws is being a bit noisy, and the brass case is perfect musical instrument to amplify the noise. But there's some charm in this watch, just probably because of this particularly loud noise that no other watches make. And also for myself is, because I have a small wrist, I tend to go for smaller size watches. 38, it's quite a max, 40 is a push. And I like field style watches, like many of us. So this is a good size watch to me. It does have this field watch look. Of course, Timex makes other small size field watches as well. And back in the days when they were still making inexpensive, or dare I say to use the word cheap mechanical watches, they have the Camper watches, which is the military style, in 36mm. Just this little guy in here. This is one of those that they have it in the 80s, I believe. And this is a mechanical Timex Camper that uses their, again, cheap, famous or infamous V-conic movement. And I believe this one uses an M116 movement. Very rudimentary, very agricultural, but does the job. And I don't have the time grapher in front of me, but the last time when I checked this watch, it's actually running pretty accurate. I think it's 20 seconds plus 20 seconds a day. Of course, the beat area is all over the place. It's a cheap movement, but for telling time, it does the job. It's running beautifully. And same noisy like its quartz counterpart. I don't know if you can hear it. And as the watches are moving to quartz, Timex reissue these watches with quartz movements, which is this one in here. It's in almost every way identical to the mechanical one on the left hand side. As you can see, the one on the left is the mechanical, the one on the right is the quartz. Sorry about the glare, maybe I'll put it this way. Yeah, you can match less glare. They're almost identical in every way. Maybe if you go to the minute detail, then you can tell the quartz one have a much darker black dial. The one on the left, which is mechanical, it's very dark gray. If you want to argue, it's not black enough, but they're the same almost. Dimension wise for this, guys, the quartz one it's 36, lug to lug 42. The mechanical version 35, so it's teeny tiny bit smaller. Maybe it just depends on where I'm measuring it. For all intents and purpose, it's about the same. Lug to lug, 42. So very comparable. Of course, there's also another smaller size camper. This one in here, 34 millimeters camper. This is really a diminutive watch, small size. 34 measuring, and lug to lug is 39. I love to wear this watch a lot because it's so light and small. The only thing about this watch is you really cannot put a NATO with this watch because the gap is so tight, and it's using a very odd 19mm strap. So finding a two-piece nylon NATO style strap, it's very difficult. So good thing the drab olive green strap on this looks pretty nice, so I've been wearing this one. Anyway, let me bring them into the picture again. So one thing you can see with all these field style watch is very simple black dial, white hands, very legible. You can tell time at a glance. And you can see from this Weekender here, the immediate flaw is the hands. Depends on the angle. A lot of times you can't even tell the time, like what is now as comparison. The hands almost disappeared, and you can only see the black dials and the white numerals because it used silver hands, so you can only see it in a certain angle a lot of times. Of course, you can just hit that indigo button if it's the night, but daytime, in the shade, good luck. So here's my project today, to modify it to make it more legible and more rugged looking. By the way, before we start the project, let's have a wristwatch check. Wearing my Seiko SNX111. At a glance, this is almost like any Seiko 5 that you find, but the magic is in two places. Some of you might have noticed already. The crown is at the 3 o'clock position, not a normal usual place for most of the Seiko 5s, which is at the 4 o'clock. And also, one thing, if I can attempt to make it bigger for you guys to take a look, is the indices. You can see that there's a small black line on the indices, very fine line, and the same fine line, black line, carries onto the hand as well. And this is what differentiated from other Seiko 5 that have a similar look, making it very, very legible. For more in-depth review of this watch, I will introduce you to a video done by Watch Geek a couple years ago on this SNX111, and I don't believe this watch was released outside of Japan. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I also purchased this from Japan using Buy service. It's costing a little bit more than I like to pay for a plain Seiko 5 with 7S26 movement, but for watch lovers, sometimes things are irrational, even for Seiko 5. So, and one thing also is many Seiko 5s of this style have their hands that is a little bit too long or a little bit too short, or they use dolphin hands, which to myself it's not very appropriate for a sportier style watch. The dolphin hands is too dressy, and this hand, it's in my eyes perfect. But back to this modifying project. So here's the tub of paint. So probably you know what I'm going to do. Yes, I'm going to paint the hands. So first off is to open the watch, of course. By the way, I didn't buy this watch new. I bought it from a seller on Marketplace. Sold it for $20 and with a dead battery. So the first thing I did when I bought the watch is to literally in the car, I just opened up the case back and plopped the battery in, and it started. So I know this is a project I can go with. So first thing to do is to open up the case back. And for those of you who opened up Timex before, you know that there's a notch here. You can see that there's a small arrow on here. Can you see that? Marking. Just put your case back opening too and give it a push. Yep. And that's open. I don't know what this is actually. This is usually the kind of things that you see in a Casio watch to put the piezoelectric buzzer to make the beeping sound. But I don't know what this is in a Timex. This looks like just a piece to maybe insulation or just to keep the battery in place. No idea. So it's using a 2016 lithium battery, like many of the Indiglo watches. And I believe the lithium battery was chosen because it gives enough voltage and capacity to power the power-hungry Indiglo backlight. But the associated benefit of using this battery is they have a very long battery life. All these brass case cheap Timexes that uses a lithium battery. For these regular quartz watch that Timex produce, which by the way sadly use a very generic Epson Y121 movement, which is the equivalent level as a Miyota 2000 series movement, the cheapest quartz movement you can find. These ones, the battery may last about 2 years, 3 years the max. Watches that use these kind of lithium batteries can easily last 4, 5, 6 years. I have a Timex Easy Reader that I have for 5, 6 years already, and I don't play with the Indiglo button much, and that one has been still running fine. So this advantage of out of many things, in-house movement being a very long-lasting in terms of battery. So as a field watch, isn't that what you look for? Long-lasting battery. Just like some of the Marathon, I believe, uses the ETA F06 movement, which is supposed to have a 6 years, 5-6 years battery life. So let's take out the battery in here, so we can have a closer examination of this movement. Nothing fancy. It's not pretty, just a quartz movement, but it takes up all the space in this brass case. Now the next thing is to find where I can take out the crown. If I remember correctly, it is one of these places that you can just push a pin into to release it. But I don't quite remember which one. Perhaps it's this one. Let's give it a try. Because I did open one before, not this particular one, but yep, perfect. Perfect first try. So you can see the crown is out, and surprisingly, if I can just make it bigger for you to see, there's actually a gasket in the crown. So this watch is supposed to be 30-meter water resistance only, but there is a gasket, although not the SKX style double gasket. But because of this, you should have much better confidence of washing your hands or even going for a light dip in the pool without harming the watch. And of course there's a gasket at the back as well. We'll take care of that. There we go. Now the crown is out. Let's see if we can get the movement out. We'll do the modifications. So we'll get the movement order. There we go. Very gently. Don't break it. As most of you know, it's a bit fiddly trying to do intricate work while trying to do it in front of a camera. So, movement holders out. So this is the side that goes in. Still refuse to come out. Okay, now we almost got it. Oops. Great. Movements out. We can begin our project. I did not pay attention to that. There's actually a rehold. Decent one. Quite a deep rehold. And like I said, I bought this watch used, so it's not the most perfect condition. There's a big scratch on the crystal. Good thing it's not cracked, but I'm not too fussed about it, because this is supposed to be a field watch for rough use. Okay. I just want to get a few tools and provisions that I need for this modifying project. Here we go. So on the workbench you can see that there's a tiny brush, the acrylic white paint, and some post-it notes. I was thinking about taking the hands out and to do a more thorough job, but that would cost a lot of time, and I really don't feel like I want to spend so much time on a relatively inexpensive watch and for rough use. The goal of this is to make a watch that is very legible and I can use it without too much bother, and it's decent looking as well. So let's put aside the crown, and to paint the hand you just need to mask off the dial. It's not to paint the dial. without taking out the hands, of course. But the hands are not in the best position, so let's plop the battery back in and get the second hands moving into the right place. Or maybe I have it in the hacked position, so let me put this back in. Okay, now get the second hands moved away. This is almost the most ideal position where the hands are separated. Good. Right. So the next step is to do the masking. Post-it note. This is my lazy way of doing it. It's good enough. It's actually real 3M branded post-it note, not the cheap ones. Good. So just slide the post-it note. You can use any paper. I like to use post-it note because it sticks and it will keep it in place. But because of the tightness of this, almost any thin paper will do. By the way, post-it note is not it's not the thinnest paper. Okay, this is not ideal. Okay, and there we go. There we go. Perfect. This is almost just like painting your house. You just mask the right thing and get the hands ready. And now you get the second hand's mask off as well, because I was thinking about keeping the second hand red as it is, but then a proper field watch have white second hands for legibility. Say for if you're trying to sync the watch with the rest of the team, you want to be able to look at the second hand. As you can see, it's a bit fiddly. So you're just ripping off the paper to make them smaller and smaller until everything fits. In this case, it fits like this. I think I got it. Actually not the most ideal because, yeah, there we go. Now I got it. Of course, pay attention not to bend the hands, because if you bend it, it will interfere with each other when they're moving. Now, it's not the most perfect thing, but it looks white now because of the studio light. But let me just paint and put it back, and you can tell the difference. Oops, the piece of paper keep coming out, so I just have to be more careful in my masking. Some of you may be laughing at me already. Why don't you use better materials? Actually, you know what? Yeah, post-it note is not the best because the paper is quite thick. But there we go. We got almost all the hands masked, and I can start painting. It's very important to shake the paint to make sure it's uniformed. Beautiful. So I'm using Tamiya X2, the basic white paint, which is a gloss white. I'm fine with it. I've done other painting with Tamiya acrylic paint, which give decent results. So, and yes, I've painted watch hands before. It's just a bad habit of me like to modify watches and tinkering them. Again, I limit myself to tinker watches that are of low financial value or impact. Because what's the point of buying a nice expensive watch and ruin it? I think the most expensive, I would say, watch that I have ever tinkered, it's a Tissot 2641 movement. I don't know what's the name of the reference of that particular watch. I know it uses a 2461 movement because I opened it to actually trying to fix it. For those of you who know, that watch uses a unique press to change, quick change date movement. So it's not like the usual Seiko kind of movement that you pull the crown to the first position to change date. You pressed the crown down to get a quick change. And when I bought that watch, that feature was disabled because the previous owner or the previous watchmaker who serviced the watch changed the crown to a standard crown that is unsigned and cut the stem very close, and such that you can't even use that feature. So I had to open up the watch and order stamps from a watch supply company in England, I think it's called Leaves, and to resize the stamp and then order Tissot crown from another eBay seller that allows me to have that feature re-enabled. And that job actually is much bigger than I almost cannot handle, because doing so actually messes up the keyless works, making the watch unadjustable. So I ended up opening up more things than I wanted to, just to get the watch working again. And now I got it working. The crown, unfortunately, although it's Tissot signed, it doesn't look right on the watch. But I'm very, very hesitant to open that watch again because of the amount that's involved. I can show you that watch while this paint is drying. Now don't laugh at me as my painting skills. As you can see, it's not very evenly painted, but in my eyes it's got good enough. So let me just let it dry for a little bit before putting more layer, and I'll show you that Tissot 2461 that I mentioned. Right. So I'm just digging up some watches from my watch box. There we go. This is the Tissot 2461. That's what I call it. I don't know the style. I think after a long extended search online, I can only find one place that have a picture, and I think it's called Deluxe or something like that. I don't remember. I like this watch too because simply the style is very simple, extremely legible. The dial is somewhat of a linen dial. The color, I'm sure it's patinized. Is that a word? It's patinaed. I'm sure it was much more silvery white when it was new, but this watch is likely a 1975 model, so how many years? 40 odd years? 40 years? It's yellow a bit, but the watch is very charming, very legible, and most importantly, it's my size. My size meaning 35. And luck to luck, it's a very short 40. And the thickness is, my goodness, 9.89. It went nicely on my wrist. So here is the crown. It's a Tissot signed crown, and it looks a little bit odd, isn't it? It's sticking out like a sore thumb, really. But I tried a few times to make it work, such that now the quick set date change actually works. So now the date is not correct here, showing 21. Is it 21? 21st, yeah. If you press it down enough, I believe it changed already. So this is the special feature for this watch. It's a press down quick set date. On hindsight, maybe I should just left it with a plain simple crown, because it does ruin the look of the watch a little bit, I have to admit, but I'll leave it. As I said, if I open it again, I'm just going to mess up the keyless work, and I really do not have confidence to really put it back together. I think it took me 5-6 trials and many hours to get it working, so I'll just leave it. Okay, so back to this project on hand. The paint has dried a little bit, so I would just put another coat or so on the second hands. The second hands now quite decently painted. And I'll put another coat on the hour and minutes hand. Just to make sure I cover up all the silver finish, because I really do not like the silver hands. It's making it not legible, and also it doesn't make sense to have shiny silver hands in the field watch, isn't it? So now it's giving it a nice thick coat of white paint. It is nowhere perfect, but to me it is called good enough. That served the purpose. Like I said, I could have taken the hands off and really painted individually, but it's too much work and not worth for an inexpensive watch like this to put so much effort. The end goal is to make it very legible and give it that field style look. Now the important thing is now to drag the paper away, not to leave any paint drag on the dial, because it will be disastrous. That makes it impossible to clean off. Now you can see that the work is not perfect, but because of the contrast, really can't tell much. Now the dial is much more legible, isn't it? At least in my eyes. Isn't what a field style watch should look like? To me it is. So I plop it back in here. Now the glare is make it impossible. It's not even a sapphire crystal, but why is it so glaring? But it's much more legible compared to what it was before. Very happy with these modifications. Now, there is one more thing I wanted to do, and some of you might have guessed it already. Let me cover up the dial so that I won't drop unnecessary dust on it. There we go. Or ruin the still wet hands. So I don't know if I still need to use this pen, but the next step is brushing. So let me just put these things away and we'll start with the brushing process. So we're now back at the workbench and to go with the next process, which is brushing. Now the brushing tool, as most of us watch tinkerer know, is Scotch-Brite, this green stuff here that we use, and also steel wool of different grades. And for those who have done it before knows that both of these two materials, especially the steel wool, like to produce fine little materials, steel debris that is definitely not for the inner workings of a watch. So for this purpose, I would take away the silicone mat and use a piece of paper. And I don't have a piece of blank paper in front of me, so I'm just going to rip up a cardboard box. This kind of box that is perfect because this will go into recycle. I just rip them up and lay them flat. These are the kind of perfect materials that you can use, recycle without wasting. There we go. So now I'll take away the steel wool and the Scotch-Brite. Also the strap, spring bar, pins, movement holder, battery, case back. Stop the show, the painted dial and the movement all put away, and the silicone mats. So this is a piece of cardboard material that will be used for sacrificial purpose. The case. Before brushing, might as well just close it. Again, when closing this kind of case back, it's very, very important to make sure that the arrow is pointing at the right place. This tiny arrow here, otherwise, because of this lip, if you don't point it at where the lug is, it's almost impossible to open it again. If you point it at randomly here or there, there's no place to where you can stick in your case back opening to get the proper leverage. I'll leave it for now. I'm not going to snap it. Just do a quick and dirty job, because I keep emphasizing this is a watch is supposed to be rough and tumble. Now this is a used watch, and the previous user probably have it for a fairly long time, being that the battery runs out, or maybe he played with the indigo button for a long time. But there's hardly any scratches on the plating, so it's almost a crime to scratch up this nicely plated watch case. But I think for a proper field watch, the brush look is important. So let's do the fine brushing using our trusty Scotch-Brite. You can see here, it's already giving it, compared to the shininess in here, it's giving a soft glow. So I don't want to brush it too deeply. Just a little bit will do to give it that tooly look. And I must have used the Scotch-Brite a lot. It's not that effective anymore. Mind you, I have modded quite a few Seikos, brushing the case using the same Scotch-Brite, so probably it is not as sharp as it should be. But still, as you can compare, this side shiny is much more dull. It won't be a perfect finish because I don't think this is the right tool. There must be better tools to do this. Plus, I'm doing it just a quick, hasty job on a gloomy Sunday afternoon rather than an extensive whole weekend job. Good enough, not the best, usable. The glossy part is very, very hard to make it, especially for this intricate curve in here. And I really don't have a proper tool to do it. Maybe if I try using this steel wool. Now I know that doing so, I am not following the direction of the brush that I did just now, but this is fine enough to get into here. Yep, it actually does an okay job. At least what I'm doing in here is, although the brushing directions won't be correct, but it does it up to give it a proper finish that I'm trying to achieve. almost what I wanted. I know this is still not what I really wanted. For a field watch, I think what I really wanted now is, if I'm given a choice, I would like to have a CWC G10. It's not just the size is almost perfect. It's a brand that have real prominence. The unfortunate thing is, be it new or used, they are pretty inexpensive for a quartz watch. I know it is using a slightly better components. In this case, I believe they used an ETA 955. All the most recent iterations, they use ETA F06, which is either case ETA quartz movement with jewels, and the F06 in particular that I know of, it's probably the high torque movement with end of life. So it's important for a quartz watch, because actually one thing I don't like about inexpensive quartz watches, the Miyota movement, while it's a good workhorse, it doesn't have any end of life indication. So in the field, or even in camping, for example, outdoors, the watch will just die on you without any notice before. And EOL movement will start to show ticking at every 4 seconds or 2 seconds to tell you that the battery is running low. Please change. So the CWC does have that feature, but really, for that price, now as a watch modder, there are ways to overcome it. One way of doing it is to get an inexpensive quartz watch that use a Miyota 2035 movement and put a nice ETA F series movement in it. And it's something that I also did before, and it works. But still, if you're a real watch collector, you want to go for something with not just the look, but real world prominence, which is CWC, which they had supplied to the British military for years. Now I'll call it a done. Of course I can do better, but with my phone camera, probably you can't see too much in detail of the brush finish, which is good because it's not perfect. But even just at a glance, I think this is good enough. So I'll start putting the watch back together and call it finished. By the way, I don't have to bring it up close, you can already see all these little debris, metal or plastic particles that's deposited in here. That's why I use a separate piece of materials instead of my silicone work mat. But I'm gonna take this away, clean it up, and get to the final stage of putting the work together. Stay tuned, I will be right back. Hello viewers. As you can see, The blue silicone mat is back, together with the watch case and the watch head, or the movement. So I am ready to put everything back. Of course, good practice. Give it a blow to make sure that there's no big piece of dust inside. Now, this being a used watch, there's a little bit of dirt on the rim, the case back, but actually not too horrible. Like I said, the case have barely any scratches, except for the one big gouge on the crystal on the top, but I don't bother too much about it. Case back as well, give it a brush, and also the watch face. Now, good practice, you know, of course, is to put silicone grease to ensure the watch will retain as much as possible its water resistance. Especially after realizing that the crown actually has gasket, so making sure that you taking full advantage of what's from the watch. Now, this is the strap, the battery, the movement holder, and almost all the required materials for putting the watch together, or at least to put the silicone grease in. Now, I know I brushed this one a bit, so to take out the crown again is to push this little thing in here. Okay. That release the crown, and to drop this back in the right place. You probably noticed that I'm not wearing any gloves or even finger cords. I'm lazy. That's the only answer. It's not the right thing to do, but so at least the minimum I can do is to clean up some of the oil from the finger. Perfect. Now here's the crown that will go in like this. And there's a movement holder, which I'll take care of it later. Now the crown, of course you want to put some grease on this piece of beautiful gasket. I'm so happy when I see that there's a gasket on the crown. You can see that there's a gasket. So it's not just a pushing crown with a very long crown tube to prevent water seeping in. There's an actual proper gasket in here. So to make it work better, of course, is to put some grease. And from my very basic knowledges, the grease used on the crown, it's substantially thicker than the one used in the case back gasket. So this is the one, as you can tell, is a Seiko branded. And I'm sure there's different ones out there, but this is the one that I know of, so I bought this one. and it's X000SA71BL. I've been using this top for the longest time because every time you use only a teeny bit. So I just scrape up a little bit from here. Now again, don't judge me. I am not a watchmaker. I'm just a tinkerer. So I just put some in here, like so. Rotate a bit to make sure that smears onto the rubber gasket, and push it in. Done. Get a fine rotate to distribute it evenly. So this part is considered done for greasing the gasket on the crown. Next is to put in the movement holder. Now, one thing I did not do just now, which may come back and haunt me, is to check if there's dust in the dial, but it is what it is. I think it goes like, no, it goes like this. Just have to give it a little bit of a push. Okay, so the movement holder is now in. The watch is looking way better than before, at least in my eyes. The last thing we need to do here is to grease the gasket at the back. For that, we need to take it out. Of course, you can do a lazy job just to put it around the rim, but maybe I have to do that because I can't seem to dig it out from its place. Oh, here it is. There we go. So this is this tiny rubber gasket that goes around the case back to give it that little bit of water resistance required. Okay, so I'm going to just grease the gasket a little bit. See that the gasket, there is a little bit of shine on it. That means there is silicone oil on it. And in my books, that's called good enough. That's the joy of tinkering in an expensive watch. That you know it's the extent of damage you can do. That how much loss you're going to incur. And the fact that I bought it for $20 used, I'm not too fussed about causing the damages or unnecessary or imperfect modifications. Okay, so this is now greased and back in its own place. Last but not least is put it back together. The battery, there's a bit of dust on it. Good old 2016. For all those watch lovers, buy a bulk pack of these things because they're used in many of our beloved Casios. I actually love this battery. I actually have a lot of 2016s for that matter because of its being used in many Casios, and I'm not feel ashamed to admit that I have plenty of them. Right. Can you hear the ticking already? Hear the ticking, right? It's back like ready. And remember what I said about this tiny arrow in here? See the tiny marking? Or you can just line up like this, looking at the Timex should be on top, like so. And also this lip in here, this little lip should be here, where it's pointing at the lug, and that's where you get the leverage when you try to pry it open. So, and the bad thing about these Timex, you can't just press it close. At least whatever I tried from, see, I even put it upside down. So careless of me. Yes, talk about that. You can't just press it close. Maybe for some people who have much better finger strength than me will be able to do that. I couldn't. I tried many times. I couldn't just get them close. So we need to bring in our friend, the case back press. Always keep it in the plastic bag just because there are little, all these little different sizes of dies for different size of case bag, and also all these different size of dies. And also I keep with it this thin pieces of wood for some watch that I really want to prevent from damaging the crystal. I actually did accidentally cracked a crystal on a vintage Seiko quartz watch, and which is my nephew's watch. I was doing something for him. I can't remember what, but I cracked the crystal because this plastic can be quite hard. And I ended up doing an upgrade for him. I just replaced the crystal with a sapphire, which he was very happy about. It's a vintage, but it's not an expensive vintage anyway. So I would give it a flat surface, and there's a bit of compliance in the wood because it's soft compared to the plastic. So it will have a little give that allows the crystal to sink in a little bit so that it won't crack it at some contact points. Anyway, so it's working now. Take out these pieces of materials, and just the final step. Putting it in here. Give it a good press. Yep. So closed up. Nice. So here it is. The hands that's visible at all angles. Now, for all us watch lovers, you want to set your watch as accurate as possible. And the tools that we use is invariably some kind of apps on your phone. But today, because I'm using my phone to film, so I don't have the tool, because my tool is actually my phone and I'm using it. So luckily, I have the same app on my iPad. So what does it mean? So let's just hack the second hands. Get the seconds right. So get it moved to the right place. And this is the app that most of us or some of us use. And you can get it on the App Store. So wait for it to hit the seconds. Here the ticking. The signature ticking for Timex. Okay. So we hack the seconds. And now you turn it to 16:55. So I turn it to 16:56. 16:56 at 0 seconds. So wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. I usually give it a 10 seconds ahead, so I'll press it down at 50. So start ticking. There we go. Done. Done. Now putting it back. I'm lazy. I didn't even use a spring bar too, I just used my finger. I cannot have nice manicure because that just destroy my nails. There we go. A modded or lightly modded Timex 38mm field watch. Perfection in my eyes with the white hands. Now, of course, as modders, we are not easily satisfied. So I have this watch here. Can I just give it a little bit more to finish it up? So yes, we can. And the final step is called straps. Here I have some NATOs that I can put it on. So this is now on the stock black one-piece NATO. Or someone would call this a Zulu strap, I think. What about going with this grey NATO, seatbelt NATO? By the way, I'm actually not too fancy wearing the NATO the usual way because it'll make the watch very thick. But just for this demonstration, I'll wear it like that. I usually don't wear it like that because it makes the watch very thick. I usually have this go under my wrist. So the grey strap actually makes the watch looks and pops very, very nicely, isn't it? I think it looks very nice on this grey seat belt. If you want to give it just a more outdoorsy look, maybe what this look can be, it's for more of a metro city look. When you're really going outdoor, you can just change it up to a black pearl-on. Now, would say that's almost perfection. For a watch that I don't mind beating up. It cost me only $20 and looks great. Because one of the things that, as much as I love my other Timex Camper and field watches, these little guys in here, I love them a lot because of the diminutive sizes that fit for me. They are all plastic. The case are all plastic, which is not bad because they're very light. But that metal case look definitely wins. So there. It's almost 5 o'clock on Sunday. Tomorrow will be a work day, so chances are I will be wearing this watch in this metro stealth look on the Monday morning when I'm working. Isn't it sweet? I think it is. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of the day. Hopefully I have another video coming up soon. Take care. Bye bye.